Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today is the 1st of May and I wanted to start my reading vlog for the Asian Readathon. This is happening all throughout the month of May and I'm currently planning to read 4 books, maybe 5 books for this readathon. So today is the 22nd and that means it's officially the start of the Dark Academics Readathon. So this is a book club that I'm part of and they started doing this book club 1 year ago and it's been a really fun book club. So far I have read every book but one. And I think my favorites that we've read are Legendborn and Ninth House, and We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Those were my top 3 picks that we had during this book club. And now they're doing a readathon, so for May they don't have a book, but this readathon. And with the 2 books I'm currently reading, I'm working towards 2 goals in that readathon as well. They cross over quite well. So we have Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which I'm now about halfway through, and it's just so hard to listen to. I get so angry, but also I feel so sick sometimes because I just feel her panic and rage and hurt and everything. It's something else, but I'm reading that one for the politics class because they did the challenges in this kind of like school way, so they are like subjects in school. So yeah, that one is for politics and the prompt is to read a non-fiction. And then I also started this book, it's called Die Mythen des alten Japan, so Myth of Ancient Japan. And this one I'm only 24 pages in so far. I'm still in the kind of introduction part and it's a little bit academic. So yeah, I have to read a little bit more, but I think this is quite an academic book. So it is a translation of the myth, but then you also get interpretations of them. So yeah, I hope that I'm smart enough to understand this book, but I think the history class is the one where you're supposed to read a book that has to do with myth. So that works out quite well too. And so these will be the 2 books that I'm working on, and I think the Dark Academics Readathon goes until next weekend, so I think a little bit more than a week. And they also have other challenges, and the Palestine book that I've talked about before that I might read after this would fit the geography prompt, because that is to read a book by an author who's from a place that you've not read a book of before. That was the weirdest way to say it, but you know, just to read a book from a place that you haven't read of before, because I don't think I've ever read a book by a Palestinian author before. So, okay, so this is what I'm planning to do for that readathon. There's also some activity prompts, and one is to bake something for the culinary class. So I might do that next week, but I'm not too sure. Yeah, I think some of the other prompts are just not my style. Like there's one to do like a playlist for a book, but I don't really listen to a lot of music, so I don't see myself doing that. But yeah, it's just a fun readathon and it will be over when you watch this, so why would you care? Yeah, I'll talk to you soon again. So I made it through the introduction, and now this is quite interesting because you get the text from 2 different kind of ancient texts that were translated, and then you get chapters that explain what the text actually means. And that's very interesting because honestly, if I would just read the text, I would not understand anything. So I just finished the first bit, which is basically about where the world came from and what the first gods were. And I don't pretend that I understood everything, but I hope that it will come together a little bit more as I get through this. So yeah, I'll continue with the second one later today. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how I get on with this because it's a very interesting format.
My little group stepped into a small conference room. There is no celebration. We are shaken, finally releasing the pent-up fear we carried, knowing how close we'd come to an alternate outcome. I thought my body wasn't worth anything. I thought I didn't matter, but I do.
So I'm already in bed, but I just finished the trial part. The trial's over. The sentencing is still, in the future, currently where the book is. But I'm so glad. This was so hard to read. And wow, it's just wow. If you could only imagine all the feelings that I have right now, like, oh my God. Read this book. Just do me a favor, read the book. I think it's time for an update. I am now more than halfway through this book. I'm about 170 pages in, and I think the text is about 290 pages. I don't know whether I will finish this book today. I don't want to be too optimistic because I have plans tonight. I have a Zoom call with some friends, so that will diminish my reading time today. But yeah, this book is definitely interesting, but it's also, you know, that clip with you get a car. It's basically that, but just you are a god, you are a god, you are a god. So this text is, yeah, really unusual for me to read because pretty much everything is a god. Like, one god sweats and the drips of sweat are turning into 5 gods and stuff like that. So it's very bodily. So the two kind of like parent gods, I don't know how you would call that in English, they basically create everything through sex. It's not, called sex, but like basically they are married, and by doing what you do in a marriage, they create everything. So that's one thing. And then they kill each other, and like the blood drops and the urine and the vomit of some of these gods turn into new gods. It's like interesting, definitely interesting. It's unlike any kind of mythology I've ever read about. And I guess, I don't know if I understand it correctly, so if I don't, please don't come at me. But the way I understood it from the text is that these mythologies for Japan, they were actually written for political reasons, and they just had a lot of gods. They just had a ton of gods that they valued. And so in this text, they try to bring a lot of that together. And so they went to different areas in Japan and collected, the myths that were told there. And then they tried to make one big story out of it, which didn't really work so well, I guess. And a lot of the times when something like that happens, like one god is cut into like 5 pieces and all of these pieces are a new god, then maybe 2 of these gods actually are important and the other 3 are made up because 5 is like an important number. And yeah, so it's just like, they will say like, and then he took his sword and he cut this god up into 5 parts, and the first part became blah, 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 and the second part became blah, 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 blah. They just ramble off all of these names, and the translator tried to cut out some of that because it's just, you just read through all of these names and you're like, okay, now we have 5 new gods, I guess. And then after that, he swung the sword, and the trips that flew from that part of the sword became 8 new gods, and the blood that dripped from that part of the sword became 5 new gods. It's just like rambling off the gods that were created, and it's very hard to see some line of a narrative there. And I guess that a lot of these things are basically just ways to create a, what do you call that? In German we say Stammbaum, so like the family history, the family tree, where you can basically see, that the final god that is like his descendants become like the emperors or whatever they're called in Japan, and that in this line in the family tree you see that he actually stems from the sun goddess or something like that. So they create this like huge family tree of gods just so that every important family in every important town has some kind of way to say, well, yeah, but we're actually descended from the sun goddess. So that's the way I understood it, and that they just used these kind of myths to legitimize their political power and standing and their privileges. So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting, right? It's like nothing I've ever read before. It's, yeah, whatever. And so my other book, Know My Name, I still have about 4 hours, a little bit less than 4 hours left. We finally got through the trial, which it was very triggering for me. Like all of these kind of themes of like gaslighting and stuff, it's hard. It's just hard because if you're a woman, you know these things, and it's just very triggering. But I'm very glad I pushed through that part, and then there's this part where it talks about her statement being released on BuzzFeed and all of the feedback she got for that, up to the point where actually Joe Biden wrote her a letter. And when she talked about that and just the feelings of all of that, I cried in my bathroom. I was getting ready to go to bed and I just cried so much. Yeah, it's such an important book, but it also just breaks me, and it definitely pulled me down with it, which is not a nice feeling. And so I'm still a little bit hesitant to give it a rating, because I think objectively this is a 5-star book. You could not get this to be any better. But subjectively, I'm not enjoying the progress of reading it at all. But I think that now we're kind of bouncing back again because the trial is over. I said before that in the earlier parts, she always managed to get that balance, to put in things that make it a little bit lighter to give you hope again. But then the trial part is just hours and hours of like devastation and anger and sadness and feeling lost. And yeah, I am so glad I never had to get through any of this, because like, how did she? It's amazing. And she's just such a strong person. I think that's obvious. I mean, she wrote a book about all of that. So having to go through that for the amount of time that it takes to even write a book about it is wow. But yeah, now we're after the trial, and I think the last couple of hours will talk about, how to kind of leave it behind and get a new outlook on life. So I think now it will bounce back a little bit, and I think that it will end on a hopeful note, because that's just the vibe that I have from this book. But it's just so hard to read, and yeah, I just feel sorry for every single person who ever had to get through this, especially in the US. But I think that, the justice system in a lot of other countries aren't that much better. It's a tough ride. It's a tough ride. So that's it for my update. So I just finished Know My Name by Chanel Miller. That means that I have now finished off the nonfiction prompt for the Asian Readathon, and I also finished the politics class for the Dark Academics read along, and I actually have the live show running right now with reading sprints, so I will get into my, Japanese book in a second. It's also almost finished. I have like 5 pages left. But yeah, Know My Name instantly went onto my favorite shelf for the year. I gave it 5 stars. I think the audiobook is incredible. So if you're thinking about picking it up, I can highly recommend it. It's not a fun read and it's not an easy read. And I did power through some of the parts because they were so triggering and harrowing, and there was so much gaslighting, which is always a huge trigger for me. Like, gaslighting is one of my worst triggers. So that was quite interesting. And yeah, I just know that I will miss her voice in my head. I am trying to think of an audiobook to listen to now, but even though my wishlist is like so long, I can't think of a single audiobook I want to start later when I do the dishes, because that was just such an experience. And yeah, it was just amazing. It was seriously just amazing. And to know that she sat down to tell us this story, it just blows my mind. So yeah, I just hope people read this book. Obviously, it's been very hyped. It has really good ratings. I also asked my partner to read it because when the death in Britain occurred earlier this year in March, where a woman was killed, and all of these like stereotypes came back up, like why was she walking alone at night, why was she wearing whatever she was wearing, blah 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 blah. When that happened and the gaslighting in the media was so strong again, it just really took me out. It just really destroyed me for a couple of days, and I had very long discussions with my partner about it, because obviously he doesn't understand. Like, he has never been on the receiving end of these gaslighting accusations. So yeah, I think if you are also unsure and you're not really understanding these discussions because, maybe you're a man or maybe you're just a random person who never had to live through something like that, I think this is an amazing read to really see how it works and how it works in institutions like the judicial system. And yeah, just pick it up, just read the book. As long as you're, safe. Obviously, if this can trigger something that, you can't trigger in yourself, then don't. But I think it's an amazing book, and it definitely has a hopeful outlook. And at the end of the book, they actually have the statement again that went viral on BuzzFeed. Okay, that was the live show. And I feel like it sounds like they recorded that one first, because in that part her voice actually breaks and she has to take breaks and stuff like that. So it's a very emotional ending with that statement, which I think is a good thing. And I even listened to the acknowledgements because I wasn't ready to let her voice go. So yeah, amazing. Probably my favorite audiobook of the whole year. So I just finished my book on Japanese myth as well. I decided to give this 3.5 stars. This was quite an interesting experience because I knew nothing about Japanese myth, and so I think I learned a lot. Still, it is wild. It's pretty weird, and I did like the commentary of the author because that made it much more easy to kind of understand what's going on. And I think it's especially interesting because of the reason behind this kind of version of the myth, because I think this was like in the 8th century or something like that, that the kind of emperor of then Japan decided he wanted these myths to be told in a way that would secure his power. And so these kind of goddesses and gods all are used to show that he's a descendant of the Sun Queen. And yeah, that was just very interesting. And you could definitely tell from the way these stories are told that a lot of the original myths were lost in that process because they were not really adding to that. And so they left a lot out. And the author of this book also mentions a lot that this reads as if the authors of those myths back then didn't really understand everything that was said in these myths when they were still oral, and so they misinterpreted things or just didn't explain stuff. And it also talks about how a lot of these myths just exist to be like a precedent for certain rituals, and that these rituals are never explained in the myth. They're just thrown in there, so you kind of see like, oh yeah, they did that back then, so it makes sense, but not, there's no reason why they do it in the myth. They just do it, and it kind of works. So I thought that was really interesting because, yeah, I just never saw a myth like that is so much, instrumentalized, I guess. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting experience. And then in the last bit, she also talked about how that influenced the Japanese politics during World War II, which is obviously a very dark time in Japan. If you're interested in that and the kind of climate, I would highly recommend reading the Barefoot Gen books. They're manga. It's a manga series about Hiroshima, and the first volume really caught that very hostile environment and the way people thought about the war and stuff. And it was easy to see how that ties in with the myth and how they were used. And yeah, so overall, a very interesting experience. And that is my history class prompt for the what's it called, for the Dark Academics Readathon. And then the, I don't know, what kind of prompt was it for the Asian Readathon? I don't even remember. I'm so bad at this. But yeah, this was my Japan book, and yeah, I'm really glad that I finally read this because I had it for years and I learned something, which is great. And so the only book for the Asian Readathon I have left on my TBR is the book by the Palestinian author. Unfortunately, Empire of Sand will not be here this month. A friend ordered it for me as a gift, and she told me this morning that currently it says it will be here in 3 months. So amazing. I don't know where she ordered it, what happened there, but that's just how it works. So we'll have one more book to read and discuss, and then I can let you go with this vlog. So I'm out of the bathtub and I have read the first 100 pages. I still don't remember what this book is called in English. I think it's The Blue Between Sky and Water. I really have to memorize that. Can we just take a quick moment to talk about this cover? Does this scream horrible war crimes and, refugee status and stuff like that? No, it does not. Why do these books in Germany always get these kind of like, oh, this is a nice book about holiday feeling covers? Like, it doesn't make sense, but whatever. I do enjoy this book a lot right now. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that it reminds me a little bit of Homegoing by Yajazi, because it is an intergenerational story, and so we don't spend like a ton of time with each of the characters, and time goes by very fast. Like in these first 100 pages, I think we have covered already like, I don't know, at least like 25 years, probably way more. It jumps in the last bit that I just started to very far in the future, and I'm interested to see how it continues from there. I do also really like that in the translation they kept a lot of the typical or sometimes not so typical Arab words. Like some are quite obvious, like inshallah and stuff like that. I can't say it properly, I'm sorry. But there's also like different foods that are kept in the original term and stuff like that. And I do enjoy that because it always makes me feel more like I'm reading an actual book by an actual author that knows what they're doing. So yeah, I enjoy that a lot. And last but not least, I do like the characters. I feel like they are all so unique that even though we don't spend a ton of time with them page-wise, you still get such a good grasp of who they are, and you just, just feel close to them because they are so unique. For example, the like great grandmother of the kind of voice that is telling the story, she has some mental problems, and she is said to be talking to a jinn, and that is kind of incorporated. And yeah, I just really like the feeling how this book blends like mythology and mental health and, all the horrible things that they're suffering. I think it just works for me. It just really works for me. It just has that kind of magical realism feeling because of that, but with the Arab kind of myth woven in there. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. It's really interesting, and I'll tell you more when I've read more. Okay, so I kept reading. I'm now on page 125. And I just wanted to say that this book gets very different in tone. There is mistreating of a child, and there's also sexual abuse of a child. Right now it's really triggering to read because I have not been assaulted as a child, but like the mistreatment hits very close to home the way it is described. So yeah, huge trigger warning there. It's very, very hard to read. So I will try to push through. I hope that it won't be such a long part of the book, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm glad to say that this part was quite short. It was still horrible, but I think that at least the sexual assault bit is over now. So yeah, I'll keep on reading. So I'm now 225 pages into the blue between sky and water, and I thought I'd give you a quick update. A lot has happened, so I'm more than halfway through the book now. What I found very interesting, especially comparing it to the other book about Palestine that I've read, is that they both refer to something that actually happened, and that is the death of Rachel Corrie. But while this book kind of talks about it in passing and just uses it as a real life event to kind of tie into the story quite loosely, because one of the characters is actually named after her, and so it is a little bit explained. The other book used it in a way that, they made up a character that actually had the same kind of fate as the real life Rachel Corrie. And I don't know, I just didn't like the way it was used in the other book. I just preferred it the way it was in here, where you actually learn what actually happened. And yeah, I don't know. I just always feel a bit weird when books use something that doesn't really go well with a story, and then they are like, well, but it is based on an actual event. And I'm like, yeah, but was it a good choice for your story? I don't know. So yeah, I just preferred the way this book dealt with it, to be honest. It's still, yeah, just very raw, very hard to read. A lot of things that are just mentioned in passing, or that I think will just inspire you to look more into. Now we're into the 2000s, so the events are more current. So some of these things maybe you could remember from the news from a couple of years ago and stuff. So yeah, I do really, really enjoy this book. I think the writing style is fantastic. It's one of my favorite things about the book. And I think the structure is also very interesting because you have this one character, Khaled, who is kind of the narrator, but not really. And it's just very interesting the way this seems to be tied in at the end. So I still have quite a way to go tomorrow. I wish I could finish that tomorrow. We will see. But yeah, I'm just really, really excited, and it's a very good book. So I'll keep you updated. So today's the last day of the Dark Academics Readathon. So my goal is to finish this book. I have a little bit less than 200 pages left. And if I don't do it today, it's, not that bad. I still have done one more day for the Asian Readathon, and I definitely want to finish it in time for that, even though it doesn't really count for the Asian Readathon, but it fits the theme. So yeah, we'll see whether I can get this done today. So this is the last update for this vlog, because I just finished The Blue Between Sky and Water. I still don't remember the English name of this book, but I have finished it. I decided to give it 4 stars. I really loved the beginning. I thought it was very strong and it reminded me of homegoing, but then the last couple of parts weren't my favorite, and this book has one of my least favorite tropes. It is my definite least favorite trope, and that is like accidental pregnancy. I just don't like that in any story. So yeah, I felt like in the last couple of parts this book went into a weird direction, focusing on a character that I wasn't that invested in, and I think that this was because this story is trying to make a point about family and what it means to have family and stuff like that. But yeah, it just went into a weird direction for me at the end that I did not enjoy as much. So as I said, I decided to give it 4 stars. But if you do love these kind of family dramas that are set, in an interesting location that is very woven into the history of a place, then I think this would be a great book to pick up. So in this vlog, I have basically participated in 2 readathons, so I wanted to quickly just wrap that up. First of all, this last week has been the Dark Academics birthday readathon, so I just wanted to mention the challenges that I did. So first off, we have a creative writing challenge, which I did because I wrote a blog post with a review of a book. Then we have the culinary studies prompt, and I also did bake some food. So yeah, I did that one as well. I also uploaded a kind of food vlog on my baking cooking fun channel if you're interested in that. I did not do the English prompt, which was to read a classic, and I also didn't do the extra credit. And I did not do the film, even though I thought that would be an easy one to watch a book adaptation, but for some reason in that week I didn't do it. Then I did geography, which I actually did with this book because I hadn't read a book by a Palestinian author before. Then I did the history prompt with the Japanese myth. The music prompt I did not do, and then the politics prompt was to read a non-fiction, which I did with Know My Name by Chanel Miller. So that was very successful. And then for the Asian Readathon, I think with the books that I've read, I can cover all of the prompts except my favorite genre. So that's fine by me. I had planned a book for that, but it didn't arrive here in time. So I'll just read it later this year, and that will be fine. So I had a lot of fun with with these readathons, and yeah, I hope you had a great time reading as well. I will also do a wrap-up for May. I don't know. I think I will post the wrap-up first and then this video. So if you want to hear me talk about these books in a more condensed way, then check out the wrap-up as well. I hope you liked this. If you did, leave a like or a nice comment. I always appreciate those. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon with probably a new reading vlog. Bye!